Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning.
You don't trust the police.
Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Today is Thursday, November 17th, 2022. And I know we need to talk about yesterday and everything that happened, but I have some guests with me this morning. And I say this often, but sometimes I put more emphasis. I need you all to share today's live and tag anyone that has been involved with anything to do with the police, anyone that's been paying attention to police reform, anyone that may have voted for the mayor based on her stance around police reform. They're in the middle of contract negotiations with the police department. And so this morning we have the chief of community engagement and also, and I was saying his title wrong the last couple of days. He is the senior advisor for labor relations, but I was saying the mayor's union liaison. But we have Lou Mandarini, who is in the building with us as well. And so we're going to get ready to bring them in, but go ahead and share this and get folks to come in so they can hear this information. It's easy to complain after the process, but we're going to talk today about where things are and how you can get involved. A couple of months ago, I had the privilege of being invited to a meeting at the BPD headquarters with the commissioner and some others from the administration. And there was a presentation, very transparent presentation about the police contract. So we're going to bring that to you today here in the Java Cafe. So go ahead and hit that share button as I get ready to bring in our Chief Millar, who's not a stranger to the Java Cafe, and Lou Mandarini, who for years I have heard the name and have had the pleasure to talk to a couple of months ago. And he's here today with us. And so, Lou, it's great to have you in the Java Cafe. Chief Millar, let's start with you. Just say good morning, refamiliarize some people or the new people with who you are and what you do. And we'll go to Lou as well and jump right in this conversation.
Definitely. Good morning, everyone. I honestly love when I start my mornings like this. My name is Brianna Malore. I am the Chief of Community Engagement for the City of Boston, was appointed by Mayor Wu in December and started in my capacity in January. And a lot of my role is, at the intersection of neighborhood services and policymaking and centering community voices in both of those things. And, one of the many things that I make sure communities' voices centered in on is police contract negotiations alongside the dynamic duo with Lou. So I'm excited to be here today to discuss more.
And we're definitely going to discuss more and why the mayor in your office is taking this approach. Lou, it is an honor and a privilege, sir, to have you in the Java Cafe. Please introduce it. And you'll get to see that Lou is very humble, powerful, but very humble. Lou, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe just a little bit of how you wound up as a labor relations person, because that is a very interesting, much needed space.
Sure. Well, I'm getting probably less humble by the minute with compliments like that, but thank you. And thank you to your listeners for the opportunity, and watchers, I should say, for the opportunity to come today. So I work here in City Hall. I've been with us from the beginning, although came inside in the spring. My title is actually Senior Advisor for Labor Policy. So
policies. Dang, I still didn't get it right. I'm
Almost
trying.
got it.
No, that's all right. So actually what I do is basically anything involving working people. So I mean, I sort of special projects in our city. So we have 18,000 people who work for the city, the overwhelming number of whom are, unionized. So I help with that stuff, particularly ones when there's an element of driving policy, like police contracts or school bus drivers, teachers, those kind of things. I do sort of special aspects of bargaining, but then all the other aspects in the city too. Workers who are organizing, employee benefits issues, retirees. I sort of bop around and do all of that. And I've been helping the mayor out for a very long time since she was elected to the council. So yeah, we've been in the sidecar together for a very long time. And
on the Wu train.
Wu Train, yeah, back when it was starting out. So yeah, no, so it's a wonderful opportunity. And thanks again. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Let me ask one thing that I heard from you, and then we'll give it to Chief Millar. There's policy in contracting.
Well, I mean, I think when done properly, there are always two things going on in collective bargaining, and that's private sector, public sector, federal sector, but particularly in the city of Boston. So there are two things going on. I mean, first and most directly, it is the mechanism by which we give our city employees wages, wage increases, benefits, all of those kind of things. But on another level, and this is one that the Wu administration is particularly dedicated to, it's the place where we drive policy and we make the change that we want to make. I mean, the things we do in the police contract have direct relevance to the community and the experience that citizens and businesses and stakeholders have with police every day. So, we're doing two things all the time in collective bargaining. So yeah, we drive policy through it. Absolutely.
All right. We're going to go more into that later because I heard you say that in your introduction and it sparked something in my brain. So Chief Millar, we know that the mayor, it takes a very different approach in a lot of things. And on one hand, it may appear often that, slow to move, but we know that she's very meticulous in details. But in this process, she's been a lot more open, and not saying that the others weren't open, but there is a different level of intentionality in a place. And I've been in Boston for 51 years, and I don't know how many contract cycles I've been through or have paid attention to. This one's a little bit different in the fact that we were called in to talk about where things are, and a lot of things were said on the campaign. And now I believe there's an attempt to make them come into fruition. So why is the mayor, and I didn't get a chance to ask her this yesterday, but why is as her lead for community engagement, why is it going this way this time?
Well, I definitely think if you even have the opportunity to speak to Mayor for a second, community is at the center of everything she does. So I think that lays the groundwork for a lot of the, like Lou mentioned, a lot of the policy making, a lot of the shifts that we need to see in the city that impact the community. So one, as you alluded to, one of the tools to, I guess, police reform that the mayor has talked about on the campaign side was through the collective bargaining, and how can you shift those policy changes through the police contract. But the mayor has been no stranger to having those deep community conversations. I believe early on, myself, along with Dr. Rufus Folk, started a deep community process with the search for the police commissioner. So I want to set the stage for a little bit.
Okay.
I got to set the stage.
Hold on. We can let you set the stage in its entirety.
Yes. Okay.
The stage.
Let me set this. So yeah, very early on, a key position was open, the police commissioner. The mayor appointed 5 dynamic, amazing community leaders, as well as people that have deep impact in the policing space, and wanted to really have centered the conversation very early on around community. So very early on, there was like large listening sessions. There was surveys and spaces created around 11 different languages. And through that, a lot of the feedback we heard was, about police reform in general, but a little bit about how do we use the police contract to create space for larger conversation. And to your point, the event you were invited to, we were like, okay, we heard conversations through the police commissioner search. We hear conversations through coffee hours, through all these instances. But how do we make sure that community is continued to stay engaged and centered in the conversation? And we made sure we had that space that you were invited to, with faith leaders, with community leaders, with cultural leaders. We wanted to make sure that we were informing, educating through the process, but also making sure they were embedded into a lot of the decision making as well. So it was definitely revolutionary. I don't know if I've seen it before, but I know that because of that centering community in the beginning, early on, we make sure to continue to have those conversations. So the mayor, like, one of the deep pillars of specifically around police reform, because it deeply impacts residents, communities, neighborhoods, is centered around the residents' voices. And we look to continue to have deep conversations through different avenues. But I think this is one today, even being here on the show, and how to uplift what's happening to kind of like move away the veil and make sure that residents are engaged and informed.
Thank you. Lou, with that last piece where Chief Millar ended, and do I say senior advisor because I'm saying Chief Millar versus Lou?
Mm-hmm.
And I know Bree, as I call you.
Bree.
You don't
Bree
mind.
Bree can tell me what to do. She's above me.
You've been, again, you have a lot of work in this space around collective bargaining, and you actually gave a little lesson in your introduction around collective bargaining, especially because Boston is very different. We have set a lot of trends decades and early on when union organizing first started. With that, have you ever seen a transparent process like this, especially for those that, follow Boston politics and things like that? There's a certain air of how we function when it comes to contracts and unions and stuff like this. Have you ever seen such transparency, especially with like BPD?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty uncommon, certainly in the public sector, to have this kind of openness or community process. I mean, in that community meeting that we had with religious leaders and community activists and reform activists, one person made the comment that, collective bargaining has always been the place where everything was hidden away. That was, somebody said that. And, I mean, I think at the end of the day, prior administrations made whatever choices they made, but, we're doing different things. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we want to do two things at all time. And as we talked about, I mean, we want to have a fair deal for our employees. The police are workers like everyone else is. Teachers, animal control, Age Strong, police, Brianna, the mayor. I mean, they're all workers and they all want the dignity of a contract and the respect that comes with dedication to the job. But at the same time, the mayor promised in her campaign platform, and we are following through on it, we want to cut a fair deal for workers, but we're not going to sign a contract. The mayor is not going to sign a contract that doesn't carry with it fundamental reform of the stuff that needs to be fixed. This administration is just not going to pass the buck. And there are things that need to be fixed. There are things that need to be fixed in this contract. There will be things that need to be fixed in the next contract. There will be things that need to be fixed in the contract after that. And this administration is in the business of fixing problems. And that's what we're going to do.
You see why I love Lou?
I mean, I've heard through the years, I've heard that, Lou gets it done, as we say, but just to hear, and the candor in it is just in a manner that is just being very honest and transparent. And then both of you can jump in here at any point. The reform that was in demand in 2020 definitely dictated to the election last year. And so we are seeing the follow through. I will also say that sometimes certain things that have been, Lou, you use the word embedded. There's a certain culture that comes when we get into these contract negotiations that is embedded. And from what I'm hearing from you guys is the mayor is attempting to uproot and replant or plant a different seed of community involvement and transparency. And so either one of you, what have been some of the paramount things that you've heard from the community? On one hand, I heard that the mayor wanted to do this, but then Bree, you were saying that the community was either jumping in on the idea of staying transparent, or they initiated it. But what have been some of the accomplishments or things you've learned since bringing in that group and then listening? You talked about the coffee hours, the commissioner went out and listened to people. What are some of the things that you've heard from the community that is influencing specific ask within the contract? Because obviously the level of pushback that I've observed online means that you all are asking for some very interesting things. Either one.
I could speak a little bit to that. One, I think I just want to underscore the piece of engagement that is crucially important is the informative educational piece. And I think we've been doing the job of making sure that people have the tools to advocate for what they really, really, truly want. And that's also through having, information and knowledge about what is a police contract negotiation. And I think Lou's going to get into that at some point, et cetera. So that's one thing. So I think we heard a demand for what are those things that are involved in this process, and we made sure to kind of inform community on that. We did see things we did hear, again, echoing from what Lou said, we have not even been called into a process like this before. So making sure they were informed on that. We did see elements on, civilianizing certain roles and making sure, how can we embed community policing in the contract, and what does that look like, which is to some degree civilianizing roles, and how do we make sure we're engaging with police in a healthy way, and how can we do that through the contract? So I think the core values that community has just completely and consistently underscored has been how do we just more deeply embed community policing through the contract? And we heard that very, very loud and clear, and we intend to make sure that as a part of the conversations and in part of making sure we get to a contract that could adhere to that value. And I know Lou probably has a little bit more of that.
We're going to go to Lou in 1 second, but we're going to come back to civilianizing, because there's one particular effort, and I want to be sure that I understand the process and where this falls, but there's some other conversations and pushback and things going on around civilianizing, certain roles. And we'll get back to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. Lou, what is the typical process? Can you give us sort of a 101?
Sure.
And specifically, let's go with BPD, because there may be some difference versus a SOAR or I don't know, a management level contract. What is the process? How does it begin? And just a quick overview.
Yeah. So I think until the culmination, in the end, or how these contracts end, police negotiations aren't that different from other negotiations that the city does with its unions. So, okay. In Boston, there are 4 police unions. That's one thing that's worth knowing. There's the BPPA, which is the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, the Police Superior Officers Federation, and then the Detectives Benevolent Society and the Detectives Superior Benevolent Society. So the one that most people overwhelmingly are ever going to interact with, or the one that most people think about when they think about, police and police unions and who they deal with every day, is the BPPA. Mm-hmm. Now, that's far and away the biggest union that we negotiate with, somewhere between 1,500 and 1,600 officers, somewhere between 4 to 5 times the size of the other 3 unions put together. Okay. So, BPPA is, most of what people will see, and they're patrolmen. So that's exactly it. So the folks that, you sort of see and interact with on the street, the people that are going to show up to answer a call, the folks you're going to flag down for help, overwhelmingly are going to be BPPA. So, the process, like any other process, starts, the parties get together and negotiate. You have as many sessions as it takes to make progress. Historically, the process with the BPPA could be 15, 20, 25 sessions. It could be a very long time. This particular one that we're dealing with right now, I think we just had our 8th session. And things are a little bit different here. I mean, the biggest one being we have a contract here that expired at the end of June 2020.
I was going to ask. It's
yeah.
So this is, let's just pick up that this is going to be retro. Once it's, you said culminates, it will come into culmination. It will be retro. All right.
Right. So basically, we're negotiating a contract that's going to expire pretty quickly as soon as we get done. Unless we extend the time frame. But so that whole process goes. You have as many sessions as you have. But what makes police and fire negotiations different from every other public sector union is that they have a process in the end called the JLMC, which is the Joint Labor Management Committee. That's a state agency.
Okay.
That is mandatory arbitration. So the parties submit to it, and you can have a case. The case can go anywhere from a few days to 60 days. And then an arbitrator will hand down a decision on wages and various sort of policy things. Each side is allowed 5 policy issues, and then wages are considered a separate thing. So what happens then, that the arbitrator will hand out a decision, and then it goes to the city council, and the city council has, a very important role in deciding whether to fund it or not. And that is to say whether the contract is affordable and whether the city can pay for the contract, because the whole process is the arbitrator makes the decision, but then it comes back because the city has to look at it and decide whether it's affordable. So there was a famous one back in 2014 that had 3 years going back and 3 years going forward. It was a very big award, and there's a lot of discussion at the city council about whether the city could fund it. So that's that process. So for police and fire, that's usually how the contract process ends. Although, from time to time, you do reach a deal across the table without having to go to the state agency.
Can I ask one question, Lou? So when it goes to city council, and I think in this time, how can I say this? Our counselors in the most diverse city council that we've had in history, do you foresee, and this is on the spot, I'm thinking about this based on what you said, do you see any possible policy implications that may land when the city council is talking about budget? Because there's a belief that budget dictates policy, or policy, dictates budget. And so do you foresee that there is any policy implications once this hits the council, even though they're looking at it mainly from a fiscal standpoint? Do you think that policy will come up there based on our earlier, part?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things going on. I mean, I think on one level, the council, even though, what they're doing is assessing the funding,
yes.
They're going to want to see the same level of reform that Mayor Wu is.
Okay.
Mayor Wu wants a contract with reform. She doesn't want to sign a contract that doesn't fix fundamental issues. I think the council is probably in the same place on that. I mean, we may have a discussion about what we consider to be reform, but we know what we want. We know what we consider to be reform. And then I think the other thing for the council, perennially is, and it's one thing we've heard, is, the people at the top of the wage scale in the city workforce, the 18,000 workers we have, police and fire that are at the top, the spread between them and the folks at the bottom.
Okay.
It's getting kind of big between, the clerk and age strong and, the police officer. So like compressing that so that there isn't such a yawning gap is another policy thing that I think the council will be concerned about.
So, Chief Millard, did I just hear Lou, senior policy? Did I hear? So, did I hear sort of wealth equity, wage gap equity in the contract?
I think that's all. I mean, I think that is a part of the contract negotiation process, is definitely wages and all of the above. And I know that specifically with the city council, there was a hearing filed, and we look forward to kind of having the conversation on that platform as well, making sure that we're using and utilizing all platforms that we could talk to community and elected officials, community leaders on what is it that you're seeing should be embedded, and how those conversations, and continue to have those conversations. But yes, I think wage is definitely a part of the conversation, like probably one of the things that is first and foremost in the conversation, because I think it does have to do with community policing. It does have to do with diversifying the workforce and all those other things. So yeah.
That's a good question. Lou, you may have more data here, or even Chief Millard, you as well. But Pastor Marion is asking, how racially balanced are the head of the unions? Now, that's the unions. Lou may not have that information, but from your expertise or being around, let me frame it like this. Is there room for more diversity at the lead of the police unions?
Is that to me or Brianna?
Yes, to you, or either or, but I would say to you.
I look, there is more room for diversity in every union, in the membership, in the leadership, at the international level, at the state level, at the local level. Yes, in every union that's necessary. So,
Pastor Marion, based on that answer, you got your based on his response, you got the answer to your question. Teresa is saying the pushback is because they are trying to put the community policing piece actually in writing within the contract. This would completely bind them in ensuring these policies, I'm sorry, Teresa, I'm going to laugh at you. These policies are adhered to. So it's giving some accountability if it's in writing.
Yeah, so I think this actually raises an important point too about and it was something that came up in that meeting we had, is the question of what is collective bargaining and then what is police reform? Because one includes the other, but one is broader than the other. So there is what you can fix in collective bargaining, and then there's just, police reform that's outside of that. So there are things we can do in the collective bargaining agreement. There are things that we can fix, and we're trying to fix them. But then there are things that just, by operation of management of the BPD that they can do that don't really involve collective bargaining. So, I think it's both sides working in tandem. That's how you push things forward. It can't be, and this is one of the things we see at the table with the union, because one of the issues we may get into is this issue called 111F. It's officers that are on medical leave and injured on duty leave. And there's this sort of, push and pull that we want to get officers back to duty as quickly as we can if it's possible to do it. And, the union will resist that and say that, there's a lot that management can be doing. And the truth of the matter is we're both right. I mean, there's stuff we can fix in the collective bargaining agreement, and there's stuff that management can fix. And you don't make progress until you do all the things.
The other thing I wanted to jump back to is Chief Millard brought up civilian positions. And there was a city council hearing about a couple of weeks ago that talked about, and we know that for years, not just with this mayor, Walsh, Menino, probably for him, Flynn, and everybody too, overtime is a huge part, presumably, of the contract negotiation. One of the ways that you can eliminate some of that overtime and also talk about equity, the wage gap, is offer people new jobs and positions to where the policemen that are on duty can go out and police, quote unquote, police, but then give folks a job. This issue of civilian flaggers, if I got the term right, which is basically an idea that City Councilor Kendra Lara is proposing, that basically those that civilians would be trained to be the flaggers in the street when there's construction or different things going on. And we learned, I was in a panel with a former Senator Wilkerson last night, and some will try to assert, Lou, and you may know the statute around this, that, some may say that it's legislated that those flaggers need to be officers. My understanding last night was that if you can't get a flagger, then the company reaches out, to BPD to try to get somebody with that. And so let's talk a little bit about that part that I presume would be in the contract. Yes?
Yeah. So the truth lies in between. I mean, I think our interpretation of it is that the police contract governs who can and can't perform functions that are subject to the jurisdiction of the police contract. And one of those is traffic control. So that's backed up by state law. So 150E state law that's the law that allows public sector unions to bargain, and what defines what are subjects of bargaining and all that. So for a very long time, traffic control as a function has been embedded in the BPPA contract. It's in all 4 contracts as a jurisdictional thing that police do. So if the change does not get made in the contract or in a JLMC award that the city council funds, that is not something that can happen. The civilianization of traffic control.
So we have 2 things. If I hear right, and Chief jump in here, what Council Laura doing, attempting to have a decision made via this in the contract by the time in the middle of the negotiations? Like, there's intersectionality, but is there, I like the way this sounds, there's intersectionality, but is there intentionality as far as like the timing?
I definitely defer to Lou, but I know that the conversation is happening now because the union contract negotiations are happening now. So I think it is very timely because they're happening in tandem.
Okay.
And just from my experience, to be fully transparent, a lot of my job and responsibilities to be like just very in tune and in touch with the community. And a lot of the neighborhood walks that I do, a lot of the engagement that happens on the ground is there's gaps in what gap in understanding of like what does need a police presence? Is it open, like just open streets, or is like this this detail on a development? So I think through that, through the conversations Council Laura is having, there is an education on like what does that look like. So I think her effort as well as our effort is to push an education on like what does the civilian flagger actually, like, what does that mean? And what is that process with the union contract negotiation? But I also defer to Lou on that piece. But.
I just wanted to clarify that by what I meant by intentionality and intersectionality was that not so much the 2 individuals, the mayor and council working together, but just with the movement matching, as you said, the timing of this negotiation. So I wanted to clarify that. Go ahead, Lou.
So let me say this. I mean, the council is doing its business, and I know that hearing took place, and I know there's an ordinance that's been discussed, and I just out of deference to the council would refrain from sort of having. I don't know where that stands or what's going on. Okay. What I do know is what the Wu administration wants to achieve in collective bargaining, and that is. To reform our detail system more generally. We want a detail system that works and that ensures that those projects, the utility projects, big construction projects, projects at major arterial roads, busy traffic centers, bars, banks, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, all of the details that need coverage get coverage. Okay. And so that involves a concept called prioritization. Both sides at the bargaining table have talked about the need to, have a certain set of, a set of details that are covered first. I mean, that's a big priority for us. And we had Chief Franklin Hodge from our streets department testify at that civilian flagger hearing about the need to ensure that certain projects are covered, and that's a big operational imperative for us. So, the Wu administration certainly does support the concept of civilian flaggers. Civilian flaggers are, we think, an important tool in overall detail reform, and that's our position.
I appreciate that clarity. And what I also heard there was, if I heard right, there's not an attempt to totally disband law enforcement from doing details. There is, it's kind of like the thing of walking and chewing gum at the same time. I heard, maybe Lou, if I understood right, there are tiers of details that just, you mentioned major arteries and big construction projects, bars and things like, you wouldn't put a civilian at a bar. That's just sort of a given. And so I like a couple of things I've heard you say that really speak to balance. You know what I mean? That's what collective bargaining is sort of all about. So did I hear that right? That it's not totally to disband officers, period. It's to allow a level of equity, new jobs, and experiences within the city, and also from a budgetary standpoint, where you can put civilian flaggers that aren't earning that OT hourly rate could possibly lend to budgetary implications where overtime budget can be reallocated to other things like community policing and other things like that.
Look, what I would say is this, and I think like this is probably the clearest way to say it.
All right, he said, "Look, here we go."
If we did nothing with all of the police we have, but let them work details, there still would be more details than they could work. So I think the reality of it is that, you know, there are a lot of details that go unfilled. There are a lot of details that go unworked. And, you know, I started the show by saying I've been with the mayor for a long time. And if there is one thing that defines the mayor and the way she approaches things, it's mainstream common sense. And, you know, this is just a common sense reform that overhauling details. Yes, it creates economic opportunity. Yes, it makes sure that the details we need covered are covered. It achieves a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's straight down the middle common sense what we're trying to do.
Let me there's a comment here, and Lou, thank you for when he said, "Look," I was like, this is, and Lou, sorry, but who we call Auntie Java saying, yes, construction details should use civilian flaggers. Police would be freed up to serve and protect in areas where they are more effective for the community. I have said for years that police don't need to use flagging as overtime. Most of them are on their phones and not fully engaged. I seen something the other day and I almost recorded it, but I said, no, let me behave. Personally, I ran into a fresh concrete patch and the officer cited me and said it was my fault. My argument to him was he was not doing his job, being on the phone and not directing me away from traffic. So that's one perspective that talks about what Chief Millar said she heard in the community. Now, here's another perspective from Thaddeus Miles that says, in Boston, I see police almost getting ran over. So I'm not sure about civilians in certain areas of Boston. To that point about the balance of certain tiers, major arteries, I definitely see it in other areas of our state. So those are two comments. And then also Pastor Marion is coming back and saying, are there policies in place to monitor policing police? So I believe that is more of a both of your faces at the same time were like, oh, I believe if I'm right, that is a DA's office sort of question, correct? Or Lou, if I could ask where you can, is that part of the contract negotiation? I would think of internal affairs.
So I want to make sure I understand it, but I think what the question is are there people in the police department that oversee the performance of police doing details? Is that
or just accountability? It sounds like accountability.
It sounds like general. Knowing her is probably general accountability. That's why I laughed. But let's answer in that context, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, you know, details are in the contract, and details are a work assignment. So, you know, like any other work assignment in any workplace, you know, you are subject to oversight by the command staff, by supervisory personnel, managerial personnel. You're subject to discipline if you do something that is not in accordance with the job expectations. So, yeah, I mean, that stuff is all subject to the normal rules of the workplace.
But we also, just to chime in, we also do have OPAT, who's ran by Stephanie Everett, which is accountability and transparency department that works very closely with solving probably some of the issues that questions that are arising in this room. So happy to make sure and that information is shared with you, but also Stephanie probably could be on this show too. But yeah, OPAT is definitely an opportunity and level for accountability and transparency with the police force.
Absolutely. Teresa is also saying, is there any way to include detail? Only because I know these folks, so I can hear them asking the question. Is there any way to include detail abuse within the CBA, or what's the CBA? Y'all school me. Within the CBA, or is that purely a police policy administrative function? So I think her and Pastor Marion are pointing both back to this sort of accountability piece. Lou, any response there? And then I don't know what the CBA is. Is that
CBA collective bargaining agreement?
Oh, okay.
So that's one.
Thank you, Mr. Teresa.
I mean, I don't know what detail abuse is.
I think she's being sarcastic to where either, because when I heard Pastor Marion ask the question as you were answering, we know at the state level there was some findings that the accountability in the
okay.
form of paperwork wasn't accountable, and so that may be some context of it. And I think she may be asking, do you have officers signing up, one officer taking 10 shifts, and that automatically, is I don't know for sure, but Teresa, if you could clarify within the next couple of seconds. And I just wanted to acknowledge one of the staff that's here from your office, Chief Millar, Will Dickerson, our faith-based senior advisor for faith-based initiatives, is in the building. And Teresa said, I'm right. Is there something to monitor, basically someone hounding those detail availabilities? And Lou, I want to go back to what you said about there still would be a shortage in detail coverage, because this isn't just about the civilian flaggers and opportunities in budget and overtime. This would also help meet a further need, because if you get civilian flaggers to cover the low tier, low level things that they can cover, you basically are giving more room for offers where officers are needed to cover it. That go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, I mean, it's the same sort of answer I gave before, that work rules and discipline and managerial and supervisory oversight govern both the performance of details and detail abuse. So there certainly is that regime. But I mean, I do think one thing does need to be said here, because for our administration to be effective, we have to be an honest broker to both sides.
Yep.
And folks may see things that they're concerned about, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that the police have a pretty hard job. I mean, we ask them to do things that we don't ask other people to do.
Yep.
It is a stressful job. It is a difficult job. And you see the fact that we have so many officers leaving to go to the fire department or leaving to go to suburban departments. So the sort of, I'm not comfortable with the presumption that there's sort of police are widespread doing things wrong.
Absolutely.
I just don't think it's accurate. And I don't think it's fair to the patrolmen. And I think at the end of the day, the Wu administration, to do the business we have to do, we have to be perceived as fair to both sides. So I do think that that's something that needs to be said.
It's interesting, Lou, and Chief, jump in here. I thought at some point you were going to say, and you're not saying this, I thought you were going to say this, refer to sometimes what we see a lot of times asserted in media. And that's in, Lou, with all due, and you might be a little bit my senior, you can do well for 25 years and one day make one mistake or do one thing wrong, and that 25 years of all that you've done well goes out the window. So I think across the board, and we call for this in this platform all the time, I say you can walk and chew gum. There does have to be balance. Equity is about balance. So equity doesn't mean the downfall of someone else and just the upcoming of another group or individual. It means balance, a sort of even playing field. So thank you for raising that as well. I don't believe that was so much the cadence of the folks asking these questions, but stating that I think is really real. And then see, now Lou, you're messing, and Chief knows this. You bring up a whole piece of, if they're not picking up all these overtime pieces, they can maybe spend more time and maybe look at therapy or, different things like that, because let's just be real, there is a stress level. I heard someone say to me the other day, quite surprising, a community activist, and they was like, I'm for hiring more police. And I kind of looked at the phone and I said, wait, what? Because I just presume, there's this general air about no more police. And Lou, he said something's kind of close to what you said. Because of shortages, because of different things, our policemen are dealing with a lot. Stress, regular life issues. They're human, so they dealt with COVID. Actually, they had to still be out there despite what was going on. And so thank you for raising that, Lou. It's not, and I can't think of another word, it's not capping necessarily for police, for any trolls that want to try to say that or take a clip. But what it is really bringing balance. And I think it points to the administration that it's not just at and going against the unions, but it is really a call for balance for community. Who we got to remember, a good portion of our police officers are part of this community. So I don't see any more particular questions in the comments. We can get ready for closing statements. I always understood that one main thing meaning of police has been to uphold the law of the land that has been broken by someone. So Auntie Java, thank you for that. Lou, any closing remarks? I know you did refer to there isn't a date, but there is an upcoming hearing. And then once that becomes public, I'm sure you guys will share and we can get it out. And you guys are definitely welcome back to keep us up to date of what's going on. Lou, any closing remarks, sir?
Yeah, so it's the same. Brianna and I have been involved in this sort of public process of informing people, that dates back to the promises that the mayor had to have an open and transparent process. So there's going to be a city council hearing around police negotiations. Date's not set, but it will be in December, and we certainly will be appearing, and we'll certainly be letting folks know what will happen, and the council will, the council, I'm sure, will let folks know what will happen, and it's an opportunity for a lot of people to weigh in. I think the closing statement I would make, is this, that, what we're doing with the police negotiations, the open process, and the sort of meeting our unions with fairness and directness, and sort of just being open and transparent about the reform that we need, is the watchword of this administration. I mean, this is the way we're going to do business. And whether that's the school bus drivers or the teachers or, the cops or the firefighters, collective bargaining in Boston is going to be the way that the Wu administration drives change. There is this perception out there, and I encounter it every day in the work that I do, that the unions that we have to bargain with are like they're a cross between a fire-breathing dragon and a serial killer. We can't do this. We can't do that. The unions won't let us. The unions won't let us do. Well, you know what? It's just not the case. I mean, collective bargaining can drive reform if we do it the right way. And the mayor is dedicated to doing it the right way. This process with the police embodies that new approach. And we have every reason to believe it's going to be successful.
Do I even have to say anything after that?
I'm like, all you got to do is give the benediction, Chief Malord. I mean, you just sort of preach there. But it is, and I mean, we're in a celebratory, sort of period acknowledging our mayor's anniversary yesterday. But it's how can I say this? Sometimes people that don't, this is one of the reasons why there was this sort of, hey, Jimmy, we want to make sure the public, you were a part of, being invited to a meeting, but we want to make sure that the public is aware. This is why these things are so important, because the folks, I think we capped at about maybe 22 today. They're going to go out and spread the information and make sure that others know, in case things come up in the media, or in case you hear something, in case at worst case scenarios, you see some crazy propaganda on social media, you got the facts from the folks that are right here involved. And so, Lou, we're jokingly saying you preached and whatnot, but we say that because it's just good to hear and be aware that this is the philosophy and cadence of what's going on internally. We don't always get, as you said, Chief, the veil. The veil hasn't all. Chief, anything you want to say?
No, I just want to echo a lot of the sentiment that you actually just mentioned, like the importance of community engagement. And what I want to make sure everyone that was able to tune in today is like, tell a friend to tell a friend, like making sure that information sharing is just like a part of making sure community is informed and can be a part of this process. I think without a doubt, like the Wu administration is not afraid to have the tough conversations. Like we do not walk away from those tough conversations, because that is where we meet the opportunities that can really be possible. And whether that is through the police contract negotiation or other areas of opportunity, we have to do this in lockstep with community and in lockstep. And we have to be good faith actors in this process. Like Lou also mentioned, like we also have to make sure that we're, the process of union contract negotiation is to make sure we're fair and equitable and all these things. And BPD is a part of the workforce. Our teachers are a part of the workforce, and we need to make sure that community feels embedded into that process and a part of that process, so we could make sure that we're building a strong Boston and team as we move forward. So I'm excited to continue to talking about this in different avenues and different settings, but it's all about making sure that community knows what's happening within within where they live and where they raise their families and et cetera. So it's exciting. Thank you for allowing us on this platform to have this conversation. And I look forward to being on for many, many things as well. So thank you.
Thank you both. I just wanted to raise, and now I'll be honest, it's my fault because I have yet to email the team and Kathy, but we're going to get the commissioner on as well. But as much as we can point to, ain't nobody doing nothing, let's also give balance. My aunt said I spoke with BPD officers that say that our Commissioner Cox is doing his job and making changes. And so please pass that on, Chief Millar, to the commissioner, and I'll go ahead and get that email out sometime this week so we can get him to come in.
I know you need an email. Well. Like, come on, he would love making sure that happens.
I'm just messing. I took you.
Wow.
Look at Lou's face. Anyway, let me let you guys.
I always look like that.
I really appreciate you both.
Thank
and
you.
Folks, again, share this information, tag people that need to know, and you both have a good rest of your week. And I'll say happy anniversary to y'all as well, because it's been, you all are part of the success of the last year. So thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Lou. Thank you. That was, again, one of our most informative sessions with members of the mayor's staff. I don't remember the process being like this the years that I've been involved in doing, a little bit of activism. And I don't really move in the police reform space. So, yes, thank all of you for tuning in today. Yesterday was amazing. It was amazing. Thank you those that came. Thank you for those that understood why I wasn't overzealous about you coming, because it was busy and just a lot, and young people, and just it was an awesome event. Shout out to all the young people at Madison Park High School, the media arts team. That production was primarily done by juniors and seniors and some freshmen and sophomore, I believe, at Madison Park High School. So it was an awesome event. Please forgive me because I got so caught up and forgot to put the link up at 9:00. And so actually, let me do this for those of you that want to watch. I think I can go find a link real quick and put it in the comments for those of you that want to go and watch. I encourage you to go watch because it was powerful. It was really powerful yesterday. Let me just get the link up here and get it to you guys. Boston, this will be live on boston.gov. Is this the one? Hold on, y'all. I'm going to get it. Student name, drama to me, Matt M is not. Let me run a test. I think this is it. Is it? No, I don't remember. Crap. I'll post it later. But thank all of you that attempted to get on. I got a few texts. Are you okay? Because I wasn't jumping on right at 9:00 yesterday. But anyway, we'll talk more about that next week. I have pictures and video. Shout out to Real Life Digital, our videographer partner. All right, y'all. That's it for me. Today's my Friday. So we will see you guys Monday at 9 a.m. with Dr. Brandy getting ready for Thanksgiving next week. All right, Roke. All right, folks, have a great weekend. Yes, Auntie, it is on my main Facebook page, but I'll put it on the Java with Jimmy page as well. And yes, Isaiah, shout out to Madison Park. They did it. They really did it yesterday. See, look at Uncle Thaddeus. There's the link, y'all. Uncle Thaddeus, I appreciate you, sir. There is the link right there that you can go and watch. Just hit it in the comments after I say goodbye. You can go watch. All right, folks, have a good weekend. Next week is Thanksgiving. Wow. Next week is Thanksgiving. For anybody that's traveling, I know Uncle is. Take our love to Mother. I know a few other folks that are traveling. Safe travels. Take care of yourself. And I think that's it for me today. We will see you guys on Monday, bright and early at 9 a.m. Have a good day, everybody. Peace.